And when you look back, right, I'm sure you have enough experiences. Um, what are those one or two stories where you look back and said, ah, the blind spot hit me? So Ram, your blind spots identification or
There is a crosstalk between two different applications through MQ messaging setup, right? So one application will source the messages, the other one will receive it, and it will do further processing, and that will cover one kind of workflow. So in this context, we were asked to build up a fault-resistant platform, meaning if something goes wrong with the processing of a message, we should have the ability to replay the message so that
okay,
the work will not get broken and it will go through end to end properly. Okay. So the moment this came up, okay, people who are from the architect group started thinking more on the design part, right? And they started coming up with some colorful design which will take care of backing up the message whatever we are receiving. And once we get any problem in the message processing, we take care of pulling the message data from the backup, and we have the ability to replay through some admin modules or things like that, right? We later realized that after implementing all these things, we realized that such situation never happened, okay, because the infrastructure and the IT environment is really strong enough, wherein the chances of these failures were very, very minimal, and at most, it was zero. So then we realized that, we could have further moved or improvised the human dynamics part, wherein we could have made some arrangement to ensure the triggering of the same process from the other application, so that the same thing will get replayed, okay, from the source application itself. Instead of we retaining a backup of the message and
okay,
re-triggering from the backup, we could have negotiated with the other application business units, okay, and we could have made some arrangement to redo the same process, whatever they did, okay, so that the same message will get triggered through the regular flow instead of over-engineering, this
okay.
fault-tolerant mechanism. So, in order to achieve the quality attributes of availability or fault tolerance or whatever, we have complicated the design pillar. Instead, we could have worked more on the the human dynamics with which we could have achieved it in a very little effort and without complicating the design. So those code which are doing all the backup and other things which are unnecessary every time, because 99.99% those backups are not going to be of any use, and the effort that we put in developing those codes, and those codes are again dead codes now, right? So all those things could have been avoided if we had focused a little bit more on the human dynamics part. So I see that as a blind spot with which we could have addressed all these complexities in a better fashion.
That's actually interesting, Ram. Now, what you just talked about, those dead codes, right? I think in the coming episode we will discuss that. I think this is one issue that's been holding now. Dead code is actually also another representation of a debt, because it's not
True.
really repaying that thing, right? So
Right.
it's kind of interesting that blind contextual blind spots also seem to generate technical debt.
Contribute. Exactly. Yeah. True.
Okay, so it's funny. I was thinking we were moving away from the topic of technical debt and we haven't dealt with it, but looks like all these are intertwined with each other.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
that,
let me give you
yeah,
an example of some one of the situations where contextual blind spot may be of significance here is we were working with a customer who wanted to look at automation and they said we have a great need for automation, and we started analyzing how much. So this is all about infrastructure automation
okay,
and automation from the perspective of managing a huge IT estate. And we started looking at, okay, this is how you do automation, and the whole focus was on how do we do automation? And we forgot about that, and they started listing out this is high priority, and this is what we should automate. And so we actually started working on a complex process to automate stuff, and they brought up this is something we should automate. And we forgot about that every automation, there are few reasons why you should automate, right? Which is whether you are repeating it too many times, or it is so complex that human errors can happen, right? You will want to automate, and there is too much manual effort involved. And we figured out that they were doing that particular process which they were automating uh, for something which will do once in a quarter, right?
Hmm.
And it was not really that complex in the sense that it probably was long, but they would do once in a quarter. They could just actually as well do it with a checklist, right? With somebody actually checking it off, two people sitting and checking it off, and they could have done it very well. And there was actually no need for automation, because we would have spent 2 months building that automation, something which takes maybe half an hour for two people to execute once a quarter. Actually, we did the mistake. We should not be automating this. We were hit by that blind spot that.
Is
Mhm.
the investment to the return ratio. So in both the cases that both of you talked, obviously the business was willing to invest that money. There was no problem of anybody challenging the investment.
Right.
Right, right.
But even when you have a budget, if we ask the question, is the returns proportional to the investment that is going in?
You can use that as a go no go kind of a decision making point, that should we invest in making this outcome happen? Is it proportional, right? So that outcome itself is in question. Then they says, okay, this outcome is going to give us only incremental this much, but the investment is this much, and that is when you decide not to do something. But if the outcome is desired,
Ah,
and the investment we are not really considering at this point of time, it says, to do this outcome, do we have any blind spots for achieving this outcome? uh, so that so that investment part comes as a decision for deciding to go for that outcome or not to go for that outcome, rather than uh,
identifying
looking
a
at it,
blind spot. I get it. Yeah,
identifying as
it
a
doesn't
blind
really